right, hello. Welcome to the Artificially Intelligent Podcast, where a white, cracker-ass, hunky American comedian living in the flyover states speaks with his best Black African-American person of color friend, musician, about, what do we talk about? Life, race, and the battle of the races, how white people and Black people will never get along, so why do we try? Is that what we talk about?
Something like that.
All right.
Uh,
I got one thing that I want to talk about for like a half a second, and then it's something that we neglected to talk about a few weeks ago, that we can fill the listener in on. Last week, I got crybaby about work, not being able, and then just, sweet irony, on Saturday, I had a corporate gig, and I got a very lovely standing ovation, and it was just really nice. It was very organic. I said goodnight, and first person up was this old guy, like 70s years old, retired from the company, but was at the party anyway. Just stood up, and then everybody's like, "Oh, we can stand up too." And it was just a neat moment. And the reason I bring it up is because it's the way the mind works. I don't know how your mind works, but my mind can't enjoy things. I was like, wow, this is really neat. See, I am good at my job. Why can't I get more work? I can't just hold on to the good for a moment and just appreciate the moment. I had to negate it with ego and selfishness. So I thought that was amusing, and I wanted to bring that up.
Indeed.
More importantly, what I wanted to talk about today, so just to fill people in, a few weeks ago, we talked about the hypocrisy of being offended, how anything is okay as long as it doesn't pertain to us, and then we become offended if it does. And we were going to talk about that again because you had some stories we didn't get to, but then we had a guest on, but then I overmodulated, so the guest episode didn't broadcast because the audio was garbage. Then last week we talked about what we talked about. So this week I wanted to return to the two-part series of hypocrisy and being offended. Do you want to take it away? Do you remember the stories you had? Basically, it was...
I do.
I don't remember what my story was. I know I talked about just basically the overall is people, oh, that's funny. Oh, hey, that hit too close to home. Yeah, but what about the jokes that you thought were funny that hit too close to home for someone else? I mean,
yeah.
Because I noticed that's the way a lot of society is. When people get outraged on Twitter, it's because they felt personally targeted, even when it has nothing to do with them personally. Yeah. You can break that down any which way you want. Oh, someone made a joke about cancer survivors. I'm a cancer survivor. Oh, someone made a joke about white people. Oh, I'm a white, like, it doesn't matter how narrow or broad the focus is. People react when they feel it pertains to them.
Yeah, the two stories in question, I'm trying to figure out which one to tell first, but for the few of you out there listening, one of my friends was buying a house. She's a nice Jewish woman, and her realtor is a nice young Black man. And they're talking over the phone. She knows he's Black. He doesn't know she's Jewish. Okay.
He's never seen her nose?
Oh, good Lord.
I just got canceled right because I made a bad joke.
So they're talking, right? And she's trying to sell this house. It's a vacation home because, she's Jewish, or she has multiple homes, right? So she's looking to sell this home. And they're talking, and she says, well, I want to price it at this price. And then he goes, well, no, let's price it at this price, like $10,000 higher. He goes, in case they want to Jew you down a bit. Right? Now,
I'm not supposed to laugh at racial slurs, but I love it when people use them so casually.
Right. Now, she actually thought it was kind of amusing. She wasn't offended. And oddly enough, we had a conversation earlier in the conversation we talked about people who get offended in places where it's business. It's not personal, it's
Right.
business. And so, whatever, just let it go and make your money and move on. And then, actually, later in the conversation, she told me this story, which actually illustrated her point because she was like, yeah, but this guy's really good at his job. He's going to make me a whole lot of money on this. And so, whatever. I just think it's funny that a black person would say that because, and I said to her, I said, yeah, because if you said, yeah, and I'll go around and look at all any of the stuff that's broken and I'll nigger rig it so they don't know it's broken, he would get offended. Theoretically, he would get offended, right?
I think there's a
Because,
pretty
right,
99.9% chance that if you drop that
right,
one in casual conversation,
right.
yeah.
But at the same time, he felt like it was perfectly okay to say they might try to Jew you down, right?
Yeah.
And there's a real perfect example of the hypocrisy, right? In that sense, because if somebody and he might argue that it's different. Well, it's different because my people went through. And then she would say, yes, but my people went through. And then we start comparing tragedies to see who has the right to be an asshole. Right. And it's like, what are we fighting for? The right to be a dick? Like, is that really what we're fighting for? Like, am I fighting for the right to be able to call you a cracker because all these things happen to me? I have the right to say this to you, but you can't say the same thing back to me because if I say it to you, it doesn't have historical context that it does to me. That may be true, but does that give me a right to be a dick? Like, look, what am I actually fighting for here? Do you know what I mean? Like, what
I
is
do.
it's an
Can I
interesting
try and
thing.
break it
I'm
down though?
not
This
sure
just
yet.
popped into
Yes,
my head.
please. Because I'm confused on it a little bit now that we're talking about it.
Well, I'm going to go sideways with it. I'm not sure about the whole fighting over who gets to be an asshole or who gets to be racist or who gets to use slurs. But the way I break it down, when I say racist right there, that's where my brain went is um, Jew them down is a stereotype. It's an attack
Yes,
on a perception that
absolutely.
Jewish people are cheap. And,
Yes.
you know, whereas the racial slur is an attack on the people for does that make sense? Like I know I'm like I said, this is just popping like one, they're both inappropriate. We'll start there. Both are inappropriate.
Mm-hmm.
One is an attack on who someone is because they exist. That would be the slur, the N-word. The other is a false perception that has been um, accepted as true or was accepted as true for many years, and then going all the way back to Shylock and Shakespeare, and became an expression. So you are attacking. You're not attacking. You're using a stereotype. Inappropriate,
Mm-hmm.
yes, but it could be seen as an attack on character, not as an attack on an entire race. And so
Okay. All right.
I'm not
Well,
saying one is better
then,
than the other. I'm
no,
saying that I'm
I
trying
hear
to I'm hearing
I hear
differences
what
in
you're
my head.
saying. I guess for me, if we take the specifics out of the story, because if we keep the specifics in, it won't translate because right, because then it becomes about black people and Jewish people,
Right.
right? And so in that way, then we start getting into this whole comparative thing. And that's actually the whole point, right? What like we tend to find ways to justify certain things. I don't know weird. I don't know how to say it. It's like
Justifying the unjustifiable. They're both
right.
wrong.
It's like right. It's like well, yes. Well, one we're talking about an ethnicity, and one we're talking about a historical this, and one and it's like yeah, that's all true, right? Like that's true, but like there's a but there somewhere that's like maybe we just need to learn how to be kinder to each other
Yeah.
all across the board and don't say nigger rig and don't say poor white trash and don't say Jew them down and don't say any of that shit. Not because we're not allowed to, but because why the fuck would you want to anyway? Right? Like, why is it so important for us to be able to say nigger? Like, why is that so important for like the white people? Are like, well, they say it, so why can't I say it? It's like for the same reason you can call your wife a bitch and nobody else can. That's
Yeah.
why. For the same exact fucking reason, dickhead. Do you know what I mean? And she
I
can make
guess,
fun of your dick and no one else can, you know? Anyway, don't
I
get me all
mean,
riled up. No,
the
I'm kidding.
problem I have with it, and it's weird saying the problem because I don't have a problem with what you're saying. I get it. I agree with it. They're, you know, the phrases are unnecessary. The racial slurs are unnecessary. I also have a problem with reimagining language where it's not poor white trash. It's economically disadvantaged persons of lacking melatonin. You know, like where everything where manhole cover becomes
Melatonin, you're funny.
person hole cover, or where
Yes.
it just goes is like, where's the happy medium? Because there doesn't seem to be one. It's either racial slurs are okay, or you have to change everything to match some absurd woke ideology where I believe most people are hanging out in the middle saying, yeah, I just won't say, you know, the bad things, but I won't say anything, you know, racial slur, but at some point you don't want to use economically disadvantaged person lacking melatonin. I mean, it just, you know.
Right. I think that I mean, it's not the sleep aid that they're lacking, but I hear you. I think that
Oh yeah.
um,
I'm the dumbest fucker on the planet. Oh God, I'm
but
stupid.
here,
Uh what was I
all
trying
right,
to say? Melanin? What word am I
melanin,
searching?
yeah, you're looking for melanin, but
Yeah.
I understood where you were going with it. But but
I am so stupid.
but one of my some kind of racist shit happened to me uh
You, a
years
black
ago.
person, had something racist happen to
Right,
you?
yeah. But
Shocked I am.
it was just some stupid shit, right? And I was telling one of my white friends about it, and he all of a sudden starts doing that thing. Oh, well, you don't know that it was racist. Maybe because I was having a bad day, and blah, 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 blah. And I'm like, oh boy, here we go. I was like, all right, right, okay, yep, yep, okay, cool, right, bye, right. One of my female friends calls me. Some
Oh, I
sexist
know
shit
this. Yeah,
happened
we've
to
talked about
her,
this
all
before.
right?
And yeah,
And
yep.
some sexist shit happened to her. And I was like, wow, you don't know there was sexist. You don't. And I was like, and it dawned on me kind of as I was saying it. I couldn't even stop the fucking bullshit from coming out of my mouth. I literally couldn't even stop, just nonsense, right? And afterwards, she and I talked about it later, and I was like, right, it's really hard to understand stuff that you don't experience.
Yeah.
If you in it's just difficult, right? It's not easy to do, right? So like and it's hard to see yourself objectively, right? Like the hardest thing this is why I think that if there's a God, I think that God is a sadistic comedian, you know, like just has a sadistic sense of humor because we have all this potential and all this stuff. And then yet we have these little fragile egos and this complete inability to see ourselves objectively, right? Like it's just something like if that was planned, the only reason is because somebody just likes comedy. Do you know what I mean? He just likes to watch sadistic shit happen to people
Yeah.
because that's what the combination of our physical frailties, our fear of death, and our fragile egos creates just such a fucking mess. Do you know what I mean? Like it really creates a big mess. I'm sure there's a couple other factors in there too, but I think that here's what I think. I think that if we as people took what was our responsibility to deal with and did not make it other people's responsibility to deal with our shortcomings, the world would be a very different place. And I mean that on almost every level. Like literally almost on every level, right? Like to the basics of like if I lose my temper because I don't really I'm not being aware or mindful of the fucking stuff that I'm thinking or feeling and processing it appropriately, and I snap at you, I'm literally putting my lack of awareness about who I am and what I need to do to maintain myself. I'm making it your problem. Do you know what I mean? Like on a
I know
basic
exactly what you
level
mean.
like that, and on a massive level, like all the way up to other stuff. Do you know what I mean? That basic principle. Anyway, your thoughts, sir.
Well, I just was watching something online where I'm going to sum this up just without getting into details because there's no need for it. A group of people in a dynamic. One of them starts acting like a dick to the others, and he gets called out on it. And he admits, "Hey, this is what's going on in my mind, and I was not dealing with it, so I was taking it out on you guys." And then once they got over that hump, he apologized. You know, like he didn't even realize he was doing it until he got called out. Why are you being a dick? And so it goes directly what you're saying is, I think a lot of people do that all too often. What we do is we're dealing with something, and external forces happen, and we just sort of lash out at those or treat those. It has nothing to do with the situation between the two people. It's all internal, but we take it out on those around us. And yeah, it'd be better to. I can think of very specific examples, but it get me in trouble with my marriage.
Yeah.
I did think of something else. This might not relate. You tell me.
Yes.
It goes toward being offended. I like a podcaster named Dan Turbisky, I believe his name is. He did In Searching for Richard Simmons. He did one on 912, and he did a podcast, a 6-part series, I believe, on Eddie Gallagher. Do you remember that whole case? He was the military officer. I don't know if he was an officer. He's the guy in the military that was brought on trial. Said he killed an Iraqi that was in their care, an Iraqi prisoner, and got court-martialed, was put on trial. Then Trump pardoned him. It was a big kerfuffle because Trump got involved with the military, and if a Democrat had done that, they would have lost their fucking mind. Anyway, so he did a 6-part series, and in the very first episode, I believe it was, he talks about gaining access to these soldiers, both sides of the story, and specifically the soldiers that turned Eddie Gallagher in.
I didn't get that.
Oh, fuck off. I'm not talking to you, idiot watch. I didn't even say anything close to SIRI. Anyway, he gains access to a text chain. They've all been sharing about, should we turn Eddie in? What happened? What do you think happened? This could get us in trouble. But he's in there. He's talking about it. He said, yeah, these are members of the military. They're talking about this. They're doing that. They toss the word fag around like it's a hacky sack. And then he keeps moving. Now, here's the thing. Dan Turbisky is gay. He's very openly gay. And that is the only time he mentions it. And he mentions it so casually. He's like, yeah, I'm dealing with the military. They're tossing the word fag around like it's a hacky sack. But when you get a sense of camaraderie with these guys, and I was so stunned because in today's climate, I would have expected not only a podcaster to jump on that, and or journalists, but especially a gay journalist podcaster to like stop right there and say, now let's talk about this language being used by these people in the military. That's inappropriate. I couldn't believe I had to read that in the text, but he got it. He's like, they're not bad people. I don't know that they're homophobic. It's just something, people have done forever. And in the past 3 years, it's been really curtailed. Like you and I growing up, everything was gay. Everything was gay. That car is gay. That house is gay. Do you like that? The color of whatever? No, that color is gay. Everything was gay. And only in the past couple of years has that been dialed back. And my whole point is he didn't take it as offense. He didn't put on the brakes and go, now we need to talk about this. I saw that word and I was offended. I couldn't believe they used that language. He just reported it and moved on. He didn't condemn them as people. He didn't spend an episode talking about language. Does any of this make sense? It's like he got it. He gets it.
Yeah, it calls up another question. which is I wonder, because I mean the problem is that the words, this is where we get into the discussion about niggers and Jews, right?
Right.
Because I was trying to think of a parallel of a conversation where people be throwing around the word nigger all day, you know, and I'm like, well, they wouldn't unless they're talking about black folks. And if they're talking
Right.
about black folks, then they're probably racist if they're calling them nigger. You know what I mean? Like,
Right.
like there's no real
Unless
right.
it's a mixed
You
company where see, I've never been that guy where I
right,
feel it's okay to toss it around casually because we're friends. Like, oh man, but I know white and black people that seem to be okay with it, where it's not you. It's
right,
just like you might, and they just say it,
right,
like,
right.
yeah,
Like right, if they were mixed, if there was a mixed company, if there was a mixed race
yeah,
group of soldiers, and they were saying, well, come on, you niggers don't like that kind of stuff. And he's like, oh, fuck you, cracker. You guys do this.
yeah,
And the other guy goes, yeah, but whatever. And he goes, oh, whatever, chink, I'm going to blindfold you with a piece of dental floss. And then they're tossing around jokes at each other.
yeah.
Right. I wouldn't think they're racist at all. I just think they're being funny. Do you know what I mean? Right. Like, I suppose that's true, right? Like, in the context of it, I'm having a hard time for trying to
Well,
personalize it because I can't imagine a context in which somebody would throw the word nigger around like a hacky sack, and I wouldn't leave that conversation thinking they were
right.
a
Well,
racist.
that's why I brought it home at the end by
Right.
saying I'm not, again, not like what I said before with it. I'm not saying any of it's right. I'm just saying for
Right.
decades, our whole life, everything was gay or dude, you're a fag.
Absolutely.
But it didn't
And
mean you're gay or that we hated gay people. We just didn't know any better. And in the
okay.
last 3 to 5 years, and these texts are years old. So
Well, here's the thing. If I
it's
if I
only slowly turning.
saw if I saw a group of 85-year-old white men from down south and they tossed the word nigger around like a hacky sack, I wouldn't necessarily think they were racist. I wouldn't, even though they're old white dudes from down south. I would just
Well,
think that
that's
they
the
just
joke is
grew
old
up
people just use racial terms.
right,
My
right. Like
grandfather
right, yeah,
said Jap. That was the only racial slur he used, but he had a World War II thing, and it was in
right,
newspapers, Japs bomb, whatever. I'm not saying
yeah,
it's
like
right.
right.
I'm
It
just saying
wasn't
that was
right. Yeah, there is some context that has to be taken, right? Like there does need to be some context, which leads into the next story, I suppose, in a sideways way.
yeah.
So another one of my friends, uh, she's a therapist, and she was taking a racial awareness thing. It wasn't really racial awareness. It was really about
I'm
it was
aware
about
races exist.
well,
You are a black
it's
person.
more
You are Asian.
about it was
I am
well, it was more
aware.
about how to how to deal with the specific kind of trauma that certain kinds of people have as a therapist, right? If you're a therapist and you're dealing with black people, these are the kinds of things that you have to be aware of that you may not have to deal with other people who grew up in a different way and things like that. I guess it's something like that. And
Okay, so just so
again,
we're clear, man the fuck up and deal with it isn't universal.
I mean, it's a little universal, I
I'd
suppose.
be a great therapist, is all I'm saying.
You would be. Um, but don't quote me on this because I don't actually like it's I'm doing
Right.
a bad job of explaining what it is because what it is and when I'm explaining it, it sounds really trite kind of. But when she explained it to me, it's actually like it was actually a really cool thing, right? But it was really for only for black therapists, right? And she's not black, right? So she they she was there because there were a handful of people who they're like, oh, this would be good for you because you actually do deal with people in this community and you know some people who are on the panel and stuff like that. Just come join the
People with
group.
melatonin in their skin.
Right, exactly. People with
I'm so dumb.
melatonin. Right. And so they invited her to go. Somewhere in there, she asked the question because she didn't understand something. And everybody flipped out and got to this whole point of you're not centering blackness and you're not doing this and this is a black centered space and blah blah blah. And she was thinking like she didn't even know what centering blackness meant. Do you know what I mean? She's like, there's a whole language here that I do not know. She's like, I need a prep course for the course because there's a whole thing that goes on that people don't know. And nobody took the time to explain that to her. And so when she got in and didn't know, it was her fault that she didn't know. Now, and people were like upset, and then people were like, oh my goodness, it really, it became a big thing, right? And she and I were talking about it, and I was like, well, that's fascinating because to me, in a healing space, everyone has to be able to be healed. I understand that if that's a black centered space, but if it's a black centered space, don't have white people in it, right? Like that just don't have white people in it. And if you want, or don't have anybody in it who's not black, and if you do have them in it, you cannot be offended that they don't know the rules. You know what I mean? Like in a weird way, like I understand what they're saying. And this ties back into one of our previous things where we're talking about the guy in the bubble tea place with the rude white dude asking for sushi.
No, yeah.
Right. And it's like, why does the guy who's being assaulted have to take the higher ground? Right, like he had every right to just like whoop that dude's ass, and you know what I mean, and nobody would have thought anything of it, right? If he just popped that dude in the mouth and threw him outside, right? Like whatever. But like he didn't. And it's like, right, because as much as it sucks to be the one being assaulted and also being the one who has to be the bigger person, that's actually what it means to be the bigger person. Right? That I don't know. I mean,
I'm confused and need clarification.
Mhm.
As you were telling the story, let's see if I got this right. You have a white person in a black centered space learning some guidelines or information about how to interact with or properly care for black patients. And this therapist asked what I just am asking right now, asked for clarification, and was that created a kerfuffle because they
Right.
needed help?
Right. Right. Ted, you see the little irony. You see this it's like, like a bunch of therapists were like, and people like felt like their feelings were hurt and all this stuff. Now, here's the thing, right?
Did she drop the N-bomb during the question?
She
So let
didn't.
me get this straight. Do you N-bombs?
Right. What she could have gone like, what nigga, please.
Yeah.
Right. See, that just would have been funny. Right. I like if I was on that call and somebody did that, if somebody said that and the person just went, nigga, please, I actually would laugh. It wouldn't actually be funny, but I would laugh
But did I
inadvertently
get the
because
gist of it
just
right?
the
Is
balls on the
so
person
what?
to do it.
Just looking like I am
But
here trying to understand the information being given to me, and I do not. So please help. And that made people uncomfortable, angry.
again,
What am I
again,
missing?
I'm doing a poor telling of the story, right? Because it's a secondhand translation and
Right.
and all that stuff. So I'm doing a poor telling of it. But yes, the gist of it is that she didn't understand something, and her asking for clarification for something created an issue. Now, here's the thing that I will say, right? We're going to tie this into another story. I did a rehearsal the other day um, for my side thing, and it was me, a Jewish man, and I think he's Mexican. Um, Pretty sure.
Point of order, really quickly. I think my favorite day of life when I'm dying will be, I'm not going to get this exactly right, but Fox News threw up a graphic that said something like, Trump to block immigration from 3 Mexican countries. And it was like Nicaragua, Cambodia. And I just, goddamn, was that the funniest thing I've ever seen in my whole life. It was just 3 Mexican countries. So when you say he was maybe Mexican, hey,
No, I'm trying to just think.
we're
I'm trying to
American. Once
clarify.
once we cross the Rio
No,
Grande,
I
everything's
mean,
Mexico to us. We're dumb.
no, it's not that. I can't remember. I mean, if he was Mexican or Cuban, but I'm thinking. I mean, it doesn't really matter, right?
It does
Ultimately,
to
like,
Mexicans and Cubans, but not to
no, I
us
mean
because we're
it does. It
Americans.
does.
That's
No,
the
it
whole point.
matters.
Are
No, it
you
matters.
Mexican? Are you Mexican Cuban? Are you Mexican
I
Puerto
mean,
Rican?
it
What kind of Mexican
matters.
are you?
It matters to them, but it doesn't actually matter to the point of the story, right? Like to the for the
Right.
point of the story, it does. It's ultimately immaterial. But what we were talking about Trump, of course, after rehearsal, and I was like, oh boy, here we go. And I just didn't want to do it. I just wanted to get the fuck out of there, you know. Not because it was bad, but I just, whatever. So I'm listening to them talking, and he's like, oh, Trump's not so bad. And the Jewish guy's like, what do you mean? Trump's a fucking racist and this and that. And the other guy's like, the Latin X guy is like going,
Again, that goes with the
I know.
person lacking sleep aid, but
But he says, he's like, he goes, no, you don't know. Trump's not racist. You see all the things he did for black people and stuff, and blah, 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 just on and on and on and on. And everybody calls things racist, and things aren't racist, and this isn't, and blah, 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 on and on. And I was like, oh boy. So, I was like, all right, here, pass me the joint. I smoke a little, I hand it back, and I'm like, all right, listen, I'm gonna say this, and
stereotypes.
then I'm gonna get the fuck out of here, right? And I was like, I was like, racism works in a weird way. Then I asked him, I said, when you walk in a room, if you walk into a room full of really rich, well-educated white people, do you act differently? And he goes, yeah, of course. And I said, do you find you change the way you act depending on what room you're in often? He goes, yeah, all the time, of course. I said, that's the difference right there. I said, a lot of like the white elite don't actually do that. And if they do, they're very conscious of it. And it's very much on purpose, right? It's not just an automatic reaction when they walk into a room. I said, that's the difference. I'm not saying that no white people do that when they walk into a room, right? But I was like, that's the thing. And I think that I tie this back to the other story in the sense that, like, if you have a group of women in a room and one man walks in, the whole dynamic changes, right? In the same way that if you have a room full of white people and one black person walks in, the whole dynamic changes. Like something about these things causes a chemical reaction. And so her presence in the room does cause a chemical reaction. You know what I mean? Like in a certain way. And so I understand them being like, this isn't your space. And you asking me to have to care for you in a space where I'm actually seeking care is a problem, right? The thing is that she wasn't asking for their care. She was just asking for clarification. And you know what I mean? Like, and this is the thing, like, I understand why they feel a certain way. I understand it. I also feel like if we're going to get through this, we either black people need to say, listen, we just need our own shit for a minute. We need to sort it out, leave us the fuck alone so we can sort it the fuck out. And then we'll resume these talks, previously scheduled programming will resume, right? Or if we're going to actually really do this integration thing, and that's really what we're going for, is some kind of real kind of integration, I think on both sides, we're going to have to be really fucking patient. You know what I mean? I think that, we're going to have to be fucking patient because people are people and shit takes a long fucking time. You know what I mean? And we're going to have to learn how to do this together. You know what I mean? Like, am I making sense? Like,
Yeah, but
I'm
I,
formulating
I
it as
want
I
to ask
speak. So,
a couple questions.
yes.
I don't have thoughts. I have questions. first question was the therapist required to be there for training, or was she interested in being there for training? Like she volunteered, like, oh, this sounds interesting, I want to sign up and learn. And then the next question is, how did she react to the kerfuffle? Because I know me and my ego. And if I'm in a place where I'm like, hey, I need help, I have a question, and it turns into a you did something wrong, I want to be like, oh, all right, well then fuck you, I'm done. Like, and that doesn't help relations at all. And I know that.
I
I
mean,
know that about me,
that's
but
basically what she did. She called up the head person, the facilitator. I was like, I'm out. And he had a really smart idea. He said, listen, you can't quit a program while you're this triggered. Do you know what I mean? Like you're in a space, take a couple days off. You know, the thing is like it was intense. You know what I mean? It was a lot of intense information and a lot of intense stuff, and it was like 8 hours a day on Zoom. So there's like all kinds of like,
see, that part loses me because on Zoom, um, like if I ask a question and it creates a kerfuffle and I start, for lack of betting words, getting shouted at, I'm like, oh, all right, well, yeah, can continue shouting. Oh, look, I'm playing a video game on my phone. Oh yeah, you're still yelling at me. Okay, yeah, whatever.
it
All
wasn't
right,
like
moving
that.
on.
It
Okay,
was
good.
nah,
Next order of business. I would
it
just tune
wasn't
the fuck out.
like that. It was, I mean, it was a little bit like that, but I think it was like after the aftermath, people were calling her up and telling her and just talking about how offended and this, that, and the other thing. And she's just like, what the fuck are you talking about? And so when she was talking to me about it, I was like, no, I know her, right? So it's different, right? Like I know she's not a racist person because she's not actually even a white person. Do you know what I mean? Right? Like she's white in this country, but she wasn't born here. She wasn't raised here. She, you know what I mean? So the stuff that they would be accusing her of are not things that are in her. Not only are they not in her DNA history, they're not in any of her history. The stuff that they'd be accusing her of is not actually part of her makeup. Do you know what I mean? And nor is it part of her psychological makeup because she didn't really grow up here,
Well, I
right?
think it's interesting the word you just used, because that's in my limited, pea brain. Part of the problem is we all go around accusing people of everything. It goes back to what you said. Instead of dealing with our own shit, oh, I was in a Zoom meeting and I felt triggered, so I'm going to yell at this person. I'm going to accuse them of triggering me. You got triggered. Maybe figure out why the fuck you got triggered. And I'm not saying that
Right.
just in this specific. I'm
And
saying overall, people
by
are
the
too fast
same
to point fingers.
but by the same principle, if you're a white person walking into a black space, maybe it is on you to do a little bit of
Yeah,
pre-work before you walk in and not assume that everybody's going to cater to what you need when you're in that room. Right? Like don't
I
like
hear that too. Yeah.
like it, but this is what I mean. Like the responsibility, if the people were able to deal with their stuff and like if everybody came into it a bit more fortified, none of it would have ever happened on either side, right? Because if just either person did the work, the other person would have handled it differently. But if both of them did it, it would have gone on smoothly. But I suppose maybe they were there. That's what they were there to learn, is to
Right. Can
figure
I
out
say
how to
this
do
though?
that, right? So, you know,
I meant to say this a while ago. I forgot because we got sidetracked. In my limited experience, I have bumped into quite a few, not all, not stereotyping, not blanket statement, quite a few therapists that got into therapy because they were so fucked up themselves that they would rather try and solve other people's problems than their own. Like
I mean,
I knew quite a few where they, oh, I'm in,
yeah,
this is when they're in their 20s too. So
yeah.
maybe they work their shit up, but there were quite a few in there that oh, I'm in family therapy. I'm like, you fucking
Ah,
hot mess of a human being think you want to help other people? Like,
I
I'm
mean,
not going to give any specific examples, but
I
I have a couple
know,
of
but
specific
I know
people
what
in
you
my
mean.
brain right now where I just
I know
like
what you
laugh.
mean. Same thing when I see people became police officers. I was like, seriously, you, a police officer? You're, oh my god, like that's terrifying. You know what I mean? Or not firemen so much, or firefighters. Um, Somebody got mad at me for saying that. One of my asshole Republican friends. We are talking about something, and
Again, people have too much time on their hands.
well, it's a bunch of firemen. I said, well, firefighters. And he's like, oh, fuck you with all that liberal PC shit. And I'm like, no, but that's actually what they are.
Yeah.
They're firefighters. Like, they're, you know what I mean? Like, that's what they are. Like, that's
Well,
not PC bullshit.
I do
That's just
know
what it is.
a couple firemen, and the point where that becomes questionable is when standards are lowered to create equality, where okay, this 5'4" petite woman can't lug this hose up 10 flights of stairs, but we need a woman to represent, so she's hired. And it's like, okay, but if she can't lug hose, how can she drag a person out of a building? And again, this is a blanket statement on both sides. Like, one side pushes for no women and another side pushes for parity, so that there are as many female firefighters as there are male. And it's just an interesting mess. I mean, situations like that aren't merit based. And
I have heard, though, I don't know about the firefighters, but I watch SWAT on TV, and
the movie,
no, the TV show. It's really
oh,
good. You should see it, the modern one. It's really good. I'm kidding.
I guess I
did watch
forgot
a
that
couple
existed.
episodes of it, though. No, I was trapped somewhere once, and I had to watch. I binge watched like a season.
You couldn't
of
gouge your own eyes out.
it. I couldn't. But they addressed that in the SWAT thing, where there's a female SWAT officer, and they're like talking about how they would have more if they change some of the standards, because some of the standards are geared towards men, but they've proven that doing 150 push-ups in no way in the field makes you better.
Yeah,
Right?
no, I can see
They were
that.
arguing that there's certain things that, like, yeah, you can do 150 push-ups, but does that make you a better sniper? Does that make you a better this? Does
Yeah.
that, if you are really skilled at hand-to-hand combat, like, you know what I mean? All this stuff, like, what does doing 150 chin-ups have to do with
Well,
you being, and
I look at it
and
like
in that
this.
sense, I maybe they're right. I don't know.
Maybe, but I look at it like this. I'm not, when I said it's both sides push for their own agenda, one says no. I mean, you give me a firefighter that's Ronda Rousey, holy shit. I mean, that's a great firefighter. Like, I'm not saying all women are weak. I'm saying, like, you lower the standards, so the 5'4" petite one that can't do certain jobs, maybe she can drive the truck like a motherfucker. I don't know. Maybe you break it down by position. I think of the movie Aliens. When that movie opened and you saw the Marines, you did not look at Vasquez and say, what's a woman doing there? You looked at every single Marine and went, oh, that's fucking what the future should look like. Diverse group of people that each looks like they can get the job done. Not, I think the problem is today with Hollywoodization, it's, we need to represent a rainbow regardless of qualifications. I think qualifications matter. I don't think race or gender or sexuality or any of it does, just qualifications. But I hear what you're saying. If there is a way to make, I'm passing the test to be the truck driver for the fire truck because I have fast reflexes and can see positions, and yeah, give it to the 5'4" woman who can, turn a wheel faster than a dude who might just lumber along. I don't know.
I mean, but what you're talking about just starts to beg different questions, right? Like, when we talk about different, like, it's the Sam Harris argument about IQ, how Jews have the highest IQs or something, right? And like,
what?
how black
I'm
people,
not being a dick here, but not Asians.
I don't know who it is. I'm
Maybe Jews
kidding.
have higher
I'm
IQs,
half.
but Asians just study harder. I don't know.
No, but what he'll say is, well, it's proven because more Jews have won the Nobel Prize, Science Prize, or some shit, like whatever, right? But like, his argument is like, black people's IQ is here and white people's is here and these people's here and all these things. And then, but it always begs the question, like, if the person who is designing the test somehow comes out ahead, is that implicit bias because they made the test? And if we start, right, because if you have a system in which men have designed the standards, are they not inherently biased? And I don't know the answer to that. It's a question. It's not a statement. It's a question, right? Like I don't know, but I could see how the case could be made, right? I
I
could
had a
see how
sharp
the
thought
case
and it
could
went
be
right
made.
away. Fuck. We're talking about designing the test, and I had something. Damn it. It was insightful too. It wasn't
Right.
a joke. It's
Uh,
so rare that I have those.
It'll come back.
Well, I don't
I
know.
mean, like what? Because like what do you do, right? Like what do you do? Because like, do you then like let's just play it out for a minute. And again, it's a question. It's not a statement. It's a real legitimate question. If you have a test that requires that men do 55, do 150 push-ups and 150 chin-ups and run this amount, carrying this much weight in this much time, and carry these 250-pound sandbags up and down 5 flights of stairs in under this amount of time, and keep their heart rate under, and blah blah blah, all this, right? Testosterone driven shit, right? Okay. And then you decide that those standards are unfair for women, right? So you lower all those things or whatever, because they don't actually matter when it comes to field work, right? Some of these things do not matter when it comes to actually being in the field for, say, if you're a SWAT officer, let's say, right? All right, let's say that's true. Does that then mean that because of that equality, that then men who would have been previously disqualified for the same physical reasons that the women would have been, do they now get access to it?
Interesting.
Right? Like, what do you do with that then? Right? What do you
Well,
do with that information? And do those men have just as much a right to be there because these things don't matter, even though they have, you know what I mean? Like, you know what I mean? Like, and again, would it matter? If it doesn't matter in the field, then it shouldn't matter for anybody. And
well, it
maybe it's not
depends
you just
on,
lower them for women, you just lower them for, you just not even lower them, you just change them to only what matters.
I think it goes to what you said, which sparked what I said, that it goes by categories. Do you have a blanket standard that says you must meet this standard to be a firefighter? And if so, what does that entail? Because you said it with, do you need to be able to do 50 push-ups to be a sniper? No, who would? So instead of blanket specifications, minimum requirements, do you have, okay, we have an opening for, as I said, a driver. You have to take the driver's test. Doesn't matter, you could be a 450-pound guy that's waiting on a heart attack. But if for some reason you've got cat-like reflexes, you know how to, again, like you said with the sniper, if you've got an eagle eye and you can hit a target, does it matter how many sit-ups you can do? I mean,
Right.
yeah, maybe you break it down by category instead of just saying, here's the minimum requirements to be a firefighter. Here's what you need to be someone holding a hose. Here's what you need to charge into the building. Here's what you need for rescue. Here's what you need, because yeah, you're not going to have the guy driving the truck. I probably should know how to do CPR, but should he be a full-on licensed DMT? Who knows? I mean, maybe you break it down by categories. And so then you need to
Yeah.
fill, all right, we need
Right. But
5 in this category, we need 2 in this category, and then you have to meet
and
those requiremements. But it's
and
not a blanket statement. It's not.
there has to be a baseline of what you need for any position on the fire on that spectrum. You need to have this minimum, right? You're gonna have to be able to do 30 push-ups and 30 sit-ups and this many chin-ups. It's just whatever. That's not because if you can't do that, then you literally can't do your job. Do you know what I mean? Right? I would understand like a set of require. I mean, I think if we could really just, like you said, narrow it down to just what is important on a baseline, what's important for all firefighters to have, and then what is important for specific jobs, and then just break it down. I think that would make sense. Again, I can't imagine that smarter people than us haven't really tried to tackle this. It seems to be an issue, though.
Well,
You know
I
what I
have
mean?
two
Like,
thoughts. Just off you saying that sent me sideways. I'll say this. Here's my first thought is that it's only when the position is desired. Well, there are two reasons, not when it's desired. So when you have people pushing saying, I want to be this, but I feel kept out because of these requirements, it gets messy. But if you remember, after, a few years after 9/11, first of all, everybody signed up for the military. They said, oh, patriotism, let's go join the military. But then that got tiring after a couple of years. So they really started lowering the requirements. Like, hey, remember how you used to need a high school diploma? Bring that GED. Hey, remember you used to need a GED? Come on, because they needed people. So it's funny that requirements are in place when it's a desired position and they seem to go away when it's not. The second thought I had,
that is kind of amusing.
I lost. Fuck. What was the last thing you said? I should have said the second thing first.
Oh, I don't know.
Ah,
You asked me
cunt shit.
all these heavy questions.
Well, again, it's gone. It's gone. You said something that made me, because I'd been holding on to the thought about the military and how they lowered requirements when they needed people, but something you said
Well,
inspired me.
a baseline of requirements, and
No,
then
it was the very last thing you said. No idea. All right, moving on.
All right.
Or wrapping up. Moving on or wrapping up,
yeah.
whichever you want.
Well, I mean, it is an interesting thing because again, it to me, almost all of this stuff, like again, like if the business is, well, all right, I don't know. I guess to wrap up that thing, I guess the question is why would people not want women there, right, in the first place? You found your thought.
I remembered my thought. You said
Yes.
smarter people than us have tried to solve this.
Oh, yes.
And it made me think of an article I read where everybody hates boarding a plane. Fucking everybody, section 1, section 2, section 3. And someone broke it down and figured out the fastest way to board a plane. And yet no airline has implemented it because we're humans and we're assholes. And what we like to do is if, my wife and I are seated next to each other, we think we should board at the exact same time. But the fastest way is like, all right, all the window seats, front to back, or back to front, whatever, not whole back of the plane and then whole middle of the, it's like window seat, you go from the out in. But people, when they tried it, people were, like, but my wife is boarding. Yeah, she has seat A, so people figure shit out. The problem is you can solve a problem, but then it runs into the bigger problem, which is humans, and we suck and we're fucking stupid. And you try and tell us to do anything and we don't do it. I mean, this is how stupid we are as people. To bring it back to the conversation you were having after your gig or rehearsal, in 2020, 74 million people thought it was a good idea to vote for Trump. Again, 2016, you want to throw a grenade into the system. You're like, yay, Trump, fuck the system, whatever. 2020, after 4 years after living under the asshole, you're still voting for him. It exposes you as being fucking dumb as shit. We're dumb. Problems get solved all the time. It's just impossible to implement the solution because we're humans and we're dumb.
I mean, again, call me a conspiracy theorist, but there's a lot of things people say, the system isn't broken, it's working exactly how it's designed to work.
Yeah.
And I would say that, they say that somehow during the pandemic, it's been the biggest wealth transfer, blah, blah, blah.
Oh, yeah. Well, keep us angry, unfocused, and buying shit to make us feel better about ourselves.
I mean, legal weed, free porn, seriously, they're not trying to sedate the nation. I mean, quicker way than that, I couldn't find, man. Jesus. Although with Cardi B said, I'm gonna name my pussy Benadryl because it put that nigga right to sleep. Oh, she's a poet.
And that's everything that's wrong with America. Not that she exists, but that we hold her up as talented, buy her music, listen to her, support her, give her money.
She's awesome. She's great.
She's also what?
She's great. She's fantastic. She's genius. She's a fucking genius.
What's the Princess Bride? You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. All right.
Oh man,
Barrett
that's funny.
Antar Goodwin can be found at
Yes,
antargoodwin.com. He
I
is the
can.
musical director for the Katie Henry Band.
We're starting in
The next,
January. Woo!
the Katie Henry's band, their next album is coming out January 28th. The first single, On My Way, is available now. You can listen to it on Spotify
You can.
and Apple Music and Google Play and anywhere you can get your music. The video is up on the YouTubes. The same thing, On My Way, at Katie Henry Band on all social medias, at Antar Goodwin on social medias.
Antar.g.
Well, it's Antar_Goodwin on Twitter, which you're supposed to have fixed months and months ago, but you never go in and fix that. You never go in and get back into your account so that when I tag you, you can retweet or,
All right, I'll do it right now.
Yeah, album's on my way, singles out now, go check it out. NathanTimmel.com is where you can find me. When you go up to my webpage, the first thing you're going to see is a book that I have written. It's called We Are 100. People seem to like it. That makes me happy. No new big reviews this week. The last week's was that someone read it twice, which made me happy. But I did get clearance. I submitted the audiobook and all the checks came back complete. So now there will be a slow rollout. They just said, we are putting it out to distributors. So one morning you will wake up and it will be on Apple Books, and the next morning you'll wake up and it'll be on Audible, but it's not like clicking a button and it's everywhere. It should be because it's digital, but apparently it's in the queue. So
that's awesome.
It's been verified. It's ready. I had to do these weird things. I had to record an intro and outro, not chapter, but I literally, it was a required spot. I had to sit down and create a 12-second. You're listening to the book We Are 100, written by Nathan Timmel, narrated by Nathan Timmel's penis. It wouldn't accept the book without that. And at the end, I had to put, you've just listened to Nathan Timmel's We Are, asterisk, required spot. In fact, so weird. But the audiobook is on its way.
Nice.
Slow roll into your hearts.
That's awesome, man. Now you know now everybody knows what to get their favorite book person who doesn't have enough time to read but loves reading for the holidays.
Yep. And if they like reading, books are paperback, perfect stocking stuffer. You just slide it right in there. So go to my webpage, nathantimmel.com, and click on the thing that says buy my book. All right. Good seeing your face, my friend.
Yeah, you too, man.